Hello, students. Once again, Mr. Kitts here, day three of your Cold War unit here. So today we're going to talk about nukes, which is always fun. And if I was doing this in class, I'd be bouncing around and all jazzed up on destroying the world and showing you the massive power of crazy nuclear weapons and things of that nature. So unfortunately, I'm sitting in my spare bedroom and looking out the window and talking to you. Yeah, I guess that's the same. That's not really. But anyway, imagine all of that usual energy and craziness that I hopefully bring to a classroom. Just imagine it on this thing. So, anyway, the do now today. Look at the map here. Look at Stalin, right? And what is he doing? He's almost like planting his little flag everywhere. Okay, what is he trying to do? What is one of the goals of communism? Don't forget, okay? And we talked about this when we talked about the Chinese Revolution and when we talked about the Russian Revolution. One of the goals of communism is to spread communism. Communism is like a virus, okay? And actually, under the circumstances, um, with this coronavirus being a thing right now, you know how easy it is to spread viruses, how easy it is for a virus to get transferred. Well, communism is like that. It wants to spread. It wants to get more and more people involved in communism. In fact, that's one of the massive goals of communism is to spread throughout the world. So the fact that it spreads to China and then down into Vietnam and into other areas of southern Asia is a good thing in Stalin's opinion. Okay. And this whole idea of stopping communism is what the US is going to do. And their goal is something called containment. And containment, as you can see on the thing here on the screen, this was the policy of trying to stop the spread of communism. Okay, I put a little jug of water here, okay, as a picture. That water is contained in the container, okay? Now, if you think about water in a container, if that container's not there, where does all the water go? It goes everywhere, right? So it would go all over the place. The US is basically saying, not that it's okay with communism where it is, but since communism already sort of has a foothold in places like Russia and China, the US realizes it can't go to direct war with those countries. The only thing it can do is try to stop the spread. Okay? You once again think about like this coronavirus. You can't physically kill the virus, while it's in somebody's while a person is sick. The only thing that they can do is hope to stop the spread of that virus. Okay? So that's the concept here. They want to contain it and stop it from spreading. Now, as we've seen in all of the other wars, World War I, World War II, and pretty much throughout history, everybody takes sides. Everybody gets teams, right? When we talked about World War II, we talked about the U.S., France, Britain, and Russia being on one team, and then the Germans and the Italians and Japan on the other team. Well, just like in past things, there's going to be teams here. For the US, you have something called NATO, or the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Okay, so this is going to be the United States, Canada, and about 10 other Western European allies. Pretty much all the people that we look at as allies today. People like Britain, France, Spain, Western Germany, all the ones that we are. Italy is going to be a part of our thing. All the ones that you know as being friendly to the U.S. are going to be friendly to the U.S. here. Well, clearly, if the U.S. is going to do this, Russia is going to do this as well. Okay, if you think back to World War I, when we talked about alliances, if you remember the whole lecture I did on alliances, I said if I'm friends with Miss B, and then Miss B is friends with somebody else, and they're friends with somebody else. The problem then is if Miss B's friend gets attacked, now I'm drawn into that war. Okay, so because of these alliances now, you're setting up again for smaller wars for other things. At any point, any of these smaller countries could lead to a massive nuclear war. And you can see, just based on the map I'm going to put up here, most countries are involved in this. If you're in the blue, you're aligned with the United States. If you're in the red, you're aligned with the Soviet Union. So if you're in the blue, you're a democracy, you're capitalist, you believe in all the things that the US believes in. If you're in the red, you're subscribing to this idea of communism. Or generally they talk about like socialism fitting into that element too. Now, you can see most of the countries are pretty much the ones that we know. The US, like I said, Britain, France, Italy, Western Germany, Australia, all kind of fit on the US side, whereas Russia, the satellite states, China is technically a part of this, Vietnam, Mongolia, a couple of those places are going to fit on the Soviet side. Now, there is one very scary one that's going to come up later. And if you look right here, just south of Florida, okay, there's that little red island there. And does anybody know what that island is? That is Cuba, okay? And Cuba is going to be a problem. And trust me, it is going to be a very scary problem for the United States, okay? And that's going to come up in a future lecture. Now, the arms race. So, let's say you've got a friend or a neighbor, okay? And you and your neighbor are competitive. All right, so you look across the street, you see your neighbor, and your neighbor builds a pool. And you look and you say, oh man, he built a pool. I'm going to build a pool and a jacuzzi. Okay, and then your neighbor goes ahead and says, well, he built a jacuzzi. Fine, I'll put in a jacuzzi. I'm going to put in a tennis court. I'm going to even put up basketball hoops. So you look and you say, man, he just won up me. He just put in a pool, the basketball courts, the tennis courts. Well, I'm gonna one up him. I'm gonna put in I don't know, a whole Ferris wheel and basically a fair in my backyard. Okay, I'm gonna have the coolest backyard on the block. So what are you doing here? You're essentially building up, and you're basing it on what your neighbor is doing. So instead of thinking about it like backyard essentials, like pools and jacuzzis and tennis courts, let's think about it like missiles. So the US builds 5 nuclear warheads. Russia builds 10. The US says, okay, well, I see your 10, I'll build 20. Well, then the Soviets say, all right, well, I'll see your 20, I'll build 50. And so on and so forth. Now, here's the thing. You only need about 100 nukes to end the world. And if you think that the US and Russia are only going to shoot off one nuke, well, you're crazy. They're going to shoot off multiples. So essentially what you're talking about is ending the world. And because the US and the Americans at this time period have that ability, it makes this Cold War even more deadly. At a certain point, I told you about Cuba before, things get so bad in the United States, things get so scary in the United States that literally churches are going to be open for 24 hours a day. People are going to stand on lines to confess their sins. People are going to build bunkers, and we'll show you some pictures of bunkers that people build to try to keep them and their families safe if for whatever reason what they called the big one, if the big one were to go off. So these modern nukes. Now, if you look at nukes today, I'm actually going to put these 2 links here in the Google Classroom. So you're going to see these here. Watch this. This test tube news one is pretty cool, and the other one talks about the scale of nukes today. So the question is, how safe would we be? Would we be safe in Riverhead? Okay, so would we be safe if a nuke were to hit New York City. Because let's be honest here. If somebody's going to attack the United States, where does it make sense for them to attack? Well, obviously, New York City would be a prime target. If you think about 9/11, what was the major city that was hit? It was New York City, right? So when somebody looks, and if you want to take out the United States, generally, you're going to try to take out New York itself. Okay, so I have the website here, and I'm just going to drag this over so you can kind of see what I'm doing at first. So let's say we take New York, okay? And what we can do, if you ever want to play with this is nukemap.com, okay? Always fun, okay? And basically, you can pick any type of bomb. You can see I'm scrolling through here. Any type of bomb that you want to pick. So, like, for example, Little Boy, right, was one of the first ones that we dropped, okay? So let's take a look. If we detonate this, you can see, I'm just moving this over here, Little Boy only takes out part of New York, all right? It would take out, if we're talking about Manhattan, it would take out Manhattan. Now, that's a major deal. Don't get me wrong. You take a part of Brooklyn and part of New Jersey and stuff too, and that's a major deal. But this was the old stuff. These were the atom bombs. This is not the nuclear stuff that we have today. Okay, to give you an idea, this is the only bomb. This one and Nagasaki are the only two bombs that we actually drop. So if you look right now, let me scroll over here. So if you look, okay, let's take a look at the largest bomb that the Soviets ever developed. This is called the Tsar Bomb. Now, when I blast this one, when I detonate this guy, you can see the scale that happens here. Literally, you're talking about it annihilating all of New York City. You're talking about what's a blast radius of about something like 32, 33 kilometers. Okay, you're talking in this area, these are going to have thermal radiation burns. Okay, these are going to be third-degree burns that you're going to suffer just being in this orange area here. And that comes all the way out to Long Island. You can see here, there's even this area out here, all the way on the end, where you have the gray. That's light blast damage, okay? So these bombs that we have today are incredibly strong, okay? And this whole thing has to do with this idea of brinksmanship. And what brinksmanship is coming to constant tensions. I always say it's like coming to the edge of a cliff, okay? So if you're standing on the edge of the cliff like this dude is in the picture here, you're either going to fall or you're going to pull yourself back. And essentially, the US and Russia are going to be on the brink of a nuclear war for the next 40 years. So believe it or not, I was born during the Cold War. I was born in 1981, and the Cold War was still very much a thing when I was a little kid. We used to have to do nuclear air raid drills, and we used to have to hide under our desks. So like the way we have like fire drills today and active shooter drills and things of that nature, we had nuclear drills when I was a little kid. Okay, so this brinksmanship will mean that the US and Russia are going to come within inches of annihilating the world, and then we'll pull back. Okay, so there's some video clips, like I said, I'm going to put up. So watch those video clips. If you have any questions, obviously email me and ask. Otherwise, tomorrow we'll get into the spread of the Cold War. All right, guys, have a good day. Mr. Kitts signing off.